Usually at this time, we would be standing on the dais, well-dressed, well-fed, a few drinks, and enjoying a lovely evening. To recognize you with the presidential pin and conclude your term as the NCMS President. But if you've just described a remarkable year, this too will have to be virtual due to all the things that we know. I do want to break with tradition. Normally I would be able to do this with you, but hopefully your wife Marty is there near you. And I'd ask her to actually pin you. There you go, Marty.
Hey.
The picture has gotten better already. I want to
watch it.
Palmer, I want to compliment you on your dedication to the medical society and the profession of medicine. You deserve the admiration and respect that this pin represents. You've been a steadfast leader for the medical society. Who would have thought that the huge transformation that we would see and endure over your tenure, the change in leadership, the racial unrest, and the pandemic that you've just described, and that's just a few of the challenges. You have really provided sound and steady leadership during this year, compassionate and openness with your colleagues in their community. I want to personally thank you on behalf of the Medical Society and as a good friend for your service, and congratulations on just a remarkably well done job. So thank you very much. And I don't know if we can all unmute and just give you a big rousing cheer and applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yay.
Hey.
Bravo.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Now it's my great honor to turn to the installation of my successor and introduce the next president of the NCMS, Dr. Phillip Brown, Jr. Dr. Brown is a vascular surgeon who, since 2015, has served as the Chief Physician Executive and Executive Vice President at New Hanover Regional Medical Center in Wilmington. Prior to that, he was president at Wilmington Health, where he worked for more than a decade. Dr. Brown received his MD from the Brody School of Medicine at ECU and completed his residency at Pitt Memorial Hospital in Greenville, and then on to a fellowship at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. Long involved in organized medicine, Dr. Brown is a former president of the New Hanover Pender County Medical Society. An NCS member since 1991, Dr. Brown has been involved in many aspects of the Society's governance through his service on a variety of committees and task forces over the years. He's an alumnus of the NCMS's Foundation's Kanoff Institute for Physician Leadership, and after his graduation from the Leadership College, Dr. Brown went on to become a co-chair of the program, mentoring other healthcare professionals as they grew to become leaders throughout the state. He has served on the NCMS Board of Directors since 2015 and the NCMS Foundation Board of Trustees since 2019. Most recently, in addition to his board service, Dr. Brown was named Chief Strategy Officer for the NCMS. He has a wealth of experience, a clear vision, and the necessary passion to lead the NCMS in a direction that helps promote the profession and enhance the health of all North Carolinians. I'd like to call on Dr. Brown and his mother, Bonnie Brown, who is the Executive Director of the New Hanover Pender County Medical Society, to please join me virtually for the official inauguration. Phil, it is my pleasure to turn over the leadership of the NCMS to your capable hands. As I read the oath of office, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Phillip Brown, do solemnly swear to carry out the duties. And you're muted. I guess that counts.
Best way to get me. I, Phillip Brown, do solemnly swear to carry out the duties
of the office of President of the NCMS to the best of my ability.
of the office of President of the North Carolina Medical Society to the best of my ability.
To strive to maintain the ethics of the medical profession.
To strive to maintain the ethics of the medical profession.
To promote the public health and welfare.
To promote the public health and welfare.
With a view to bringing good health care within the reach of all people.
With a view to bringing good health care within the reach of all people.
To uphold the Constitution of the United States of America.
to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and bylaws of the North Carolina Medical Society at all times,
and the Constitution and bylaws of the North Carolina Medical Society at all times,
and to champion the cause of freedom in medical practice
and to champion the cause of freedom in medical practice.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So the President's Medallion, this one right here, commemorates the inauguration of the President of the NCMS. It is awarded proudly on appropriate occasions thereafter by all presidents throughout their lives as a symbol of the office and of the ultimate honor paid to them by their colleagues. Mrs. Brown, will you place the medallion around your son's neck? Good job. Members and guests, I present to you the 167th President of the North Carolina Medical Society, Dr. Phillip Brown.
Yay!
Hey.
Congratulations.
You know, it's really with a sense of deep gratitude and honor. It's just huge to be entrusted to serve as the 167th President of North Carolina Medical Society. And of course, many thank yous are in order, and I couldn't possibly thank everyone who was so meaningful up to this point, but I would certainly like to thank, first of all, my family, many of who you just saw, you know, but my mother, who's been the executive of the New Hampshire-Pender County Society for 36 years, almost 36 years plus, on January 1st. Her being able to participate in this ceremony was really meaningful to our whole family, and that's really a large testimony to my wife's generosity in asking her to do that. And I think that tells you a little bit about us. You see, my mother and father and brother and sister are the ones who gave me the foundation to become the person that I might hope to be. And my wife and children provide the meaning in my life now to be the man I also hope to become. It's also pretty important to thank some of the staff. And I think, you know, this is a perfect time as we've been grappling with the video to talk about really all the staff who did a fantastic job trying to put this thing together in a much different way, you know, and again, it was a team effort, but certainly if you had to single out just one person for this 2-day period, I'd have to say Danielle Snyder. Wow, you know, just incredible. So super, super well done. Just making a difference for us. We couldn't have done it without you. I know I couldn't. You know, and really the same is true of Evan, who kept me straight during the time, and probably most of all, Melanie Phelps, who kept me on track getting to this point. So thank you guys so much. And it's also really important to say a big thank you to Bob Seligson, because if you did the autopsy on this whole leadership journey of mine, you'd find his fingerprints in different places all over it. And I think that's true of so many of us that have been really profoundly affected by Bob's positive influence. So to Bob, I would say, you know, many of us owe you a great debt of thanks. But it really seems like if we're going to do this thing right, I should tell you a little something about me and my training and who I really am. And so I wanted to share a couple of moments, a couple of brief stories with you about things that made me become the doctor that I have been all this time. And, you know, for somebody whose first career was a PE teacher and coach in middle school in Wilmington, the journey to medical school was associated with a little bit of risk, including bucking the advice of the dean of the medical school. I ultimately came to love East Carolina, the dean of admissions, who told me I was crazy as hell to go ahead and take the MCAT when I hadn't had organic chemistry or physics. And to whom I replied, well, I might be crazy as hell, but I'll see you after I finish the test and we'll see how it works out. And sure enough, about 2 weeks before that next year's class convened, I got invited to come if I still wanted to. And I said, yeah, I believe I will. And so that really launched me on a journey. And parts of it were slow and parts of it were fast. You know, so fast forward to my 4th year in medical school, I knew I wanted to be a surgeon. And I was doing an acting internship in trauma surgery. And the call night was one of those that if you've ever been in Eastern North Carolina in the fall, that heavy fog, so heavy that you can't really even see the hand in front of your face. Sure enough, that was the kind of night it was. And man, did it make for a wonderful call night because nothing happened. Got the most sleep I probably ever had on call before or since. But as fate would have it, early that morning, just as it was getting light and the fog was far from cleared, we got that trauma 1 signal. And in today's terms, we'd call that a mass casualty, what we experienced. It was a horrible wreck involving a school bus and several different cars. And through the fog that was not only outside now, but also inside as we were in the ED, just struggling through all that with multiple different teams running. And we had a young patient who was clearly very, very severely injured. And we had gotten the airway, started him on the ventilator. But when we got to the C part, we couldn't get an IV. Nobody could get an IV of any kind. And the chief resident tried, and the 2nd year resident tried, and the intern tried. And finally, everybody's like, what are we going to do? They looked over to this little acting intern, me, and looked at me. And I'm there as tight as I can be and said, I don't know, man, you just try. Sometimes this works out. And sure enough, as fate would have it, I was able to get venous access on that young patient who seemed like, a young man that had a chance to survive. And it was a real high for me. It was almost like as if it was a rite of passage that had happened, that I had earned a place amongst the ranks of the surgical residents of whom I wanted to become. And sure enough, we were able to resuscitate this patient and we took him back to the neurosurgical ICU. And I so vividly remember walking in that end door of that L-shaped neurosurgery unit. And it was a moment I wasn't prepared for then, and I still sometimes struggle about now, because it turns out this young man had suffered an unsurvivable brain injury. He had what's called diffuse axonal injury. And as I walked by his bed with his sister there and the rest of his family gathered around and was part of delivering that news, watching her hold his bloody little hand, finding out that he was 12 years old, I knew I'd crossed into a different place. And I walked on out of there, stood looking out the window just as the sun was baking through that fog. And we all, if we've spent time in Eastern North Carolina, we know what that looks like. That fog was coming up and that sun was coming in that end window. And I buttoned up my jacket, my little short white coat, and I took a deep breath. And I said to myself, you got through this, you can get through anything that a career in surgery brings you. And so it was behind that super suit that I lived for many, many years. And I really want to say that that ain't the way to do it. That is not a formula for resiliency. And we have to do better. We have to make sure that there are support systems that exist for people so that they know that really we're all in this together. And there are a lot of people that would do a lot of things for us when they knew we were hurting. And so that's one of the things that I think is huge for our society, is to understand what that really means, how we support our own so that they don't go through a long time all bottled up with things that they're range of emotions are not equipped to handle alone. That's a commitment we need to make to each other. And that's a commitment that I'd like to reemphasize for our society. But sure enough, things go pretty fast. And next thing you know, I was not only finished with residency, I was finished with fellowship, ready to hit the ground running as a junior faculty member at East Carolina in the Division of Vascular Surgery with my mentors. It was a heady time. I felt like I probably had arrived. And sure enough, I get the call from my mom. You know, there's this program that you probably ought to do, son. I mean, I'd just been through 11 years of training. I didn't want to go to no more classes, anything like that. But she said, you know, the medical society is starting this thing called the Leadership College. And I really think you should participate in it. And dutiful son that I am, I said, yes, ma'am, and moved right along and joined that. And that was really, really a turning point in my career. I didn't even know it at the time, you know, but I learned a lot, and it put me in a different mindset because, you know, one of the things that became evident over the years is that while medical and surgical practice is a race to the right answer, leadership is really a relentless exploration of the right questions. So it's like two different skill sets that if you don't train on separately, you're ill prepared at times. And so this leadership college experience really kind of changed me. And I went through a bunch of different leadership practices over the time. And, you know, like any other kind of practice, sometimes you get it wrong and sometimes you get it right, but you've got a framework now to put it in and you get better and you get better. But one of those times, you know, I'd already accepted the opportunity to succeed Dr. Kanoff and Dr. Brennan, along with Jeannie Comavez, in terms of leading the Kanoff Institute. And at that time, I'd really made a classic leadership mistake for young leaders, and that was to take on too much stuff. And so I went in there to the strategic planning sort of session where the leadership college was also being held with full intentions of saying, this is going to be my last year. I've got to cut some things back. And of course, the first person I needed to address that with first was Dr. Kanoff. And so I started into my mentally rehearsed spiel, and she let me get about so far. And she looked at me, and I'll never forget, just looking right at me, almost through me, but with that expression that I guarantee a bunch of you guys have seen that makes you immediately say, what am I missing? But anyway, she looked at me and said, I understand all that as long as you don't quit this. And so that was another incredible turning point for me in my career, because I then went ahead and embraced the rest of the weekend. And after that, I realized that it was actually this whole pursuit of leadership in medicine that was more energizing than some of the things I was doing back home. And so I figured out how to restructure some of those responsibilities at home and more thoroughly embrace the function of leadership. And I had a chance to revisit that just a few years later. In 2015, as I had the opportunity to take over as chief physician, because of a lot of different things, mostly cost share agreements and no compete clauses, I wasn't able to continue practice and take on this job. But this job was a chance to transform the way health and healthcare was delivered in our whole region. And I either had to jump on it, take a risk, embrace it, or be subject to somebody else doing it who I'm not sure I would have thrived under that situation. So I said, hey, let's take the risk. And I so vividly remember talking to my dad about it, because at that time I'd spent 25 years of my career in medical school and practice and residency and all that put together to get to that point as a vascular surgeon. And my dad, who had a chance to work for boards over time, really, you know, he had some anxiety over me giving up a very secure career as a private practice vascular surgeon to be really subject to working at the whim of a board and an public organization, which is what our hospital is and was at that time. But somewhere during that conversation, it occurred to me that while I'd spent exactly half my life getting ready to be a vascular surgeon, I'd spent my whole life getting the skills together that I would need to thrive as a chief physician of a system. And like so many leadership things, right? You don't know what you don't know till you get into it. And sure enough, as chief physician, first thing I realized is subject matter expertise isn't very important. I'm not here because I'm a whiz bang vascular surgeon, and what got me to there isn't going to get me to the next level of doing this. And it was that whole idea of, gosh, lead transformation. What does that even mean? Better ask a lot of good questions and figure out how to get a lot of good help from people who know things that I don't know. So we started doing some things. We realized that we had some areas to work in our organization. So I found a couple of folks to work with me, and we got started with the whole really health equity exploration and diversity and inclusion. That started with a small group of trusted people from all over our organization at different levels to help understand what health equity actually meant to our organization and how important it would be. And then along that time, we also changed CEOs at the hospital system, which I knew was happening, and I'd been a part of that. But along with that came the opportunity to craft our new mission and do our new strategic plan. And we did that, and very rapidly, we also realized that this whole health equity component that's huge in our strategic plan and our mission that says leading our community to outstanding health has a lot of components we don't exactly understand. So we really started figuring out how to be more humble as an organization, even as a leadership team in that particular organization, work within the community, listen differently, realize what we've been missing all along. And then, as fate would have it, about a year ago, our county commission, who's the official owners of our hospital, decided to consider selling the hospital. That launched us on a whole nother exploration. But that was kind of important because, that was coming along at the same time that my opportunity to serve for North Carolina Medical Society as president was coming along. And so I had a decision to make. Do I add this or do I not? Will I be able to keep the pace? We also had some health issues here at home at the time. But, I took a dual approach on that thing. I said, the time to serve is often not offered again. And it usually is offered at a time where it needs to be accepted. And also, is there a little bit of extra job security for me as somebody in the C-suite? Whoever buys us, will they really fire the president of the North Carolina Medical Society in the first year? So I said, probably not. At least I can buy a year. So I went ahead and did that. And boy, it's been a fun exploration, at least the first couple of months. And, we started exploring this whole Healthy North Carolina 2030 plan, which is a wonderful blueprint for North Carolina, right? If we follow these 21 really health indicators and pursue them vigorously as a state, aligned across all sectors, we can do some fantastic things in health. So we sort of started working on that. The board had some good discussions, and we were really poised. We had changed some things. We had put out guiding principles. We really emphasized health equity. We had a wonderful 2-day session with the Racial Equity Institute, which was incredibly eye-opening for those of us even who have dwelled in this world for some years and done this work. It's still so meaningful. So we had that, and then COVID struck. Changed everything. And I got to admit, I really thought this experience would be pretty different too, right? I had no idea I'd be sitting here right in my comfy office, getting my mom to put my medal on my neck and family all around. And that's pretty cool in its own right, but it's just kind of different than the expectation, right? But COVID has changed so much. Number one, it's laid some things bare, very bare. It has shown us that the amount of progress we've made is not really what we give ourselves credit for sometimes. And so I'm here before you today on Zoom, middle of the pandemic. massive racial disparities all around us in terms of COVID and health in general. We know that from the Healthy North Carolina 2030 report. We know that from COVID data. We know it all over the place. Here I am, the president of the oldest professional organization in North Carolina that has a sign out front that says our goal is relieving suffering and improving the health and lives of the citizens of North Carolina. But there's a dirty little secret, right? The health of the citizens of North Carolina is terrible, guys. The health of North Carolina is terrible. Right now, our state is ranked number 36 in the 50 states in a nation that's not ranked very highly for health amongst its global peers. But we can always lean back on health care, right? I mean, we're doctors, we do a good job, we can substantiate that, right? Well, no, not so much. In health care, North Carolina is number 48 out of 51, which includes the District of Columbia. So curiosity being really an important part of leadership, you always have to ask why. Why is that? What has put us in such an unenviable position, you know, as a lower third tier state in overall health? And we have these wonderful institutions all around us. We've got 5 medical schools now. We've got all these wonderful things happening. And like I do so much, I always sort of start with myself, right? And what I'm a part of. And so I'm going to tell you that I think even though we do some great things in the North Carolina Medical Society, and our history has been to do great things, and we've always had high-minded goals, I'll submit to you that we're a little bit of the problem. You know, because as I sit here before you as the 167th president of this society, and it's 171 years, I'm the 160th regular white guy we've had as a president. And next year, we're going to have the 161st one. And so we have to look at what our tendency as an exclusionary society has contributed to our current overall state of health. You see, we were created in 1949, and we started including people in 1872. So from 1849 to 1872, in 1872, we got the first female physician. But we would be 108 years old by the time we first accepted the first 2 African-American physicians that my friend Karen Smith alluded to in her presentation earlier. And even then, it was in a subordinate category as scientific members. It would not be until 1965 when Dr. George Paschal spearheaded a change in the Constitution and bylaws that struck the requirement of being white and eliminated the language of scientific members, that our society actually became on paper inclusive of all. So that really brings us to the next question about that is, what's been the cost? What's been the cost of that exclusionary perspective? Well, we don't know for sure, but what we do know is where we stand in overall health. And we do know that it's 100% accurate to say that we've lost all kinds of opportunities to bring in different expertise and different perspectives into our society. And we can say, what if we had done that? Where would we be? You know, but the truth of it is that can't do that, right? But what we can do is change now. And we can live this thing forward as an inclusive medical society that's dedicated to the tenets that we say we are on the sign. We can do that now. We can live forward, and we can change the future. Now, you have to think that after all these years, there are probably some folks that would just soon stay put, to clutch on to the past a little bit longer, to ride that thing out for just a little bit more. But it's certainly true that transformation has never been accomplished by people who will stand still, looking longingly back over their shoulder as the breathtaking pace of change accelerates beyond them. But I have a great amount of hope for lots of good reasons, valid reasons, based on what I'm seeing from the leadership team and have seen for a number of years. I don't mean to say that this is new right now, but I will say that we have a new imperative. COVID-19 and the opportunity to be in one place at one time where we just could not get away from the images of George Floyd being murdered by a policeman, of Ahmaud Arbery being gunned down by a vigilante, of Breonna Taylor being killed in her bed from what's effectively an illegal search. So we have to incorporate all these things into our thought process. We have to think differently. We have to give our space that some of the things, give space to the thought that some of the things that we thought were true may not be. And we have to commit to the whole truth. Can you imagine, for instance, going to a symphony, expecting to hear beautiful music, totally in balance, wonderfully played by every musician there, only to have a whole section of instruments not be allowed to play? How would that sound? I think it might sound a lot like 36 state out of 50 in health, 48th out of 51 in healthcare. So I'm not saying our role is to fix it, but I'm telling you our influence is mighty important. Racial justice is a part of health, and our pledge is to health of North Carolinians. I'm truly encouraged that we have the right people who are ready to make the tough decisions, to take us to some different places in policy, to make some things happen, and to listen differently with humility. My commitment to you is to help guide that process, because I certainly don't know where all the answers are, but I'm getting better and better at asking questions, and so are many of you. And as long as we keep our beginner's mind into what it takes to bring North Carolina to a higher health ranking, I believe our potential is this good. I think if we can follow Healthy North Carolina 2030, spearhead these initiatives across every sector of the state, that when the sun rises in 2030, we can be a top 10 state in overall health. That'll fundamentally change everything about North Carolina for the positive. And if we're on that trajectory, why stop then? Let's keep running. What would it look like to eliminate every health disparity within a generation? And how close might we be? You see, only those willing to risk going too far can know how far one can get. That's what I'm going to ask of our society this year, is to be open to our group taking the leadership challenge, exerting leadership courage to take us to some new levels of health in this state, and to ultimately lead this country to a different place. I believe we can do it, and I believe we will. And I'm deeply grateful to you for entrusting me the opportunity to participate in it and help lead.